Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into the Chola Dynasty. You know, that powerhouse kingdom from southern India, famous for their military might, their huge sea empire, and just incredible culture.
Yeah, and what's really striking is just how long they were around. We're talking like 3rd century BCE all the way to the 13th century CE.
Wow.
Yeah, they even get mentioned in the Ashokan edicts, those ancient inscriptions.
Emperor Ashoka. Right.
Exactly. But here's the really interesting part, the twist. They sort of disappeared for centuries, just vanished.
Right, the Dark Age.
That's the one. And then somehow they staged this incredible comeback as a massive naval power. So our mission today really is to figure out how they managed that and why their story still resonates.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that resilience because it is fascinating.
Yeah.
How does a dynasty just fade out for, what, 500-600 years?
Roughly 300 CE to about 848 CE.
And then, boom, they're back, building one of India's biggest empires. What was the secret sauce there?
Well, it wasn't just poof, we're back. It was a very calculated refoundation, you could say.
Okay.
You had this key figure, Vijayalaya Chola, around 848 CE. He saw his chance. The
Whoa.
Pallavas and Pandyas, these other big kingdoms, were fighting.
Wow, a power vacuum.
Exactly. He jumps in, grabs Thanjavur, and basically kicks off their second act. So you see, it shows that sharp political thinking was just as vital as, swords and shields.
Makes sense.
And even way earlier, they laid groundwork. Figures like Karakala Chola, he built embankments on the Kaveri River for farming, set up Puhar as a big trade port.
No.
And get this, a Chola prince, Vidalalan, conquered Sri Lanka way back in 235 BCE, shows they had sea ambitions pretty early on.
Okay, that early sea ambition, that's the perfect lead-in. Because for me, the really captivating bit is the imperial Chola era, especially under Rajaraja I and his son Rajendra I. They weren't just a land power anymore, were they? They became this formidable maritime empire. How'd they pivot like that?
That's absolutely right. And unlike a lot of empires then, they deliberately focused on naval power. They built a strong navy.
Why? What was the goal?
Control. Control of the vital sea lanes. Think the Strait of Malacca, the Pak Strait. Crucial for trade with, China and Southeast Asia.
Money routes.
Big money routes. And Rajendra I's big move, that naval campaign to Srivijaya, that's modern-day Malaysia, Sumatra, Java, that area.
Wow, that's far.
It was audacious. And it worked. They dominated those trade hubs, basically controlled the flow of goods. And guess what? They charged tolls.
Smarts.
Very smart. And that wealth, the massive income from trade and conquest, it wasn't just pocketed. They reinvested it into those incredible temples, like the Brihadeeswarar Temple in Tanjore, but also into running the empire better. Rajaraja I set up this really advanced land revenue system. It was like a whole system feeding itself, Conquest, wealth, administration, more conquest.
A feedback loop. Okay, so the wealth-fueled impressive buildings and a sophisticated government. What stands out to you about how they actually ran things, their administration?
Oh, it was incredibly sophisticated, really kind of a benchmark for its time. They managed this tricky balance, strong central authority, but also lots of local independence.
Local self-government.
Exactly, highly autonomous. We know a surprising amount about it from the Utharamar inscriptions.
Right, the stone inscriptions.
Yeah, from Parantaka I's reign, they detail how villages were run. They even describe this quasi-democratic election system.
Yeah.
Kudavolai, they called it, for choosing village assemblies.
It's an election system.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Shows a really advanced grasp of, civic participation, accountability. Centuries before many places even thought about it.
That is pretty mind-blowing. Okay, so such power, such organization. What went wrong? How did they eventually decline in the 13th century? Well, it's a bit of a classic story, unfortunately. The later Chola rulers, even the capable ones, found themselves shifting focus. Less aggressive expansion, more. Just holding on, defense.
Things started to fray internally.
They did. You had weaker leadership at times, fights over who should be king, local chiefs getting too powerful and challenging the center. It chipped away at their authority.
So internal rot.
Pretty much. And when you're weak inside, you're vulnerable outside. Rising rivals, the Pandyas again, the Hoysalas, the Kakatiyas, they put on relentless pressure.
So internal weakness plus external threats.
It's the deadly combo. Eventually, they just couldn't hold it together and were absorbed by 1279 CE.
But their story doesn't just end there, does it? It feels like more than just a rise and fall. There's a legacy.
Absolutely. A huge legacy. Their ideas about administration, their naval strategies, they definitely influenced the kingdoms that came after them in South India.
And beyond India.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. All that maritime activity left a big cultural footprint across Southeast Asia. You can literally see it in the architecture. Look at temples like Prambanan in Indonesia, or even parts of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. You can spot the Chola influence.
Fascinating connection. Okay, so if there's one thought you want to leave our listener with about the Cholas, what would it be?
I'd say, think about this. How could a dynasty, one that seemed totally lost to history for centuries, completely rebuild itself? Not just as a regional player, but as a dominant global maritime force for its time. What does that tell you about the kind of hidden strengths, the strategic depth, maybe even the sheer will needed to build and sometimes rebuild empires that truly last? Something to ponder.